What's happening, everybody? My name is Christian, and I'm here to give you a tutorial for the solo of one of my tunes called Tennessee Nightingale. This is going to be a series of videos because the solo is very long and very involved, and I don't really like just showing you the lick and saying there it is. I'm going to talk about every single note that I play and why I chose it and why it works over the tune, so on and so forth. This is also the first tutorial video that I've ever done for YouTube, so if you guys enjoy it and you want more of it, please let me know. Also, let me know if there's any other particular topic that you want me to talk about or go over, and we will definitely do that. So the first lick that I'm going to start with is the lick that you just actually heard me play, and that's this, that sort of thing. I'm going to talk about section by section, almost like beat by beat for the most part, because it is very quick, and we want to make sure that you understand every single note that I'm playing. So we'll start with that little section that I just played right there. The first thing we have to talk about is what the chord progression is. If you don't already do this, I highly recommend that if you are ever learning a solo from anybody, doesn't matter what the genre is, who the artist is, or whatever, I highly recommend that you learn what the chord progression is first before you actually attempt the solo. You can learn the solo, figure out the notes and all that, but you're not going to understand why that player decided to play what he did, or she, if you don't know what the chord progression is, because the chord progression puts the lick into context. So if I just played what I just did, if I just played that, it just sounds like a whole bunch of notes, some kind of different, maybe out notes here and there, and if you learned it just like that, that's how you would interpret it. But in a second, I'm going to show you what the chord progression is, and all of that stuff is going to make perfect sense. So first, the chord progression is simply this: E major, F sharp minor, an E diminished of sorts, and then another just E major. Okay, it's really a pretty common little figure, and all I'm doing really is I'm just moving this shape, these kind of thirds, up like that. It's very common, like, you know, country, bluegrass, bluesy sort of sound, while the E right here and the open B string ring throughout. So it's okay. So that's pretty much that. I'm going to talk about what I'm doing over each and every single chord so everything makes sense. So first, let's start with the first chord, the E chord. When I'm playing during this time, you're going to see it makes perfect sense. I play this. Excuse me. That's what I'm playing, okay? So the actual downbeat starts on this note, which is E. These two notes are simply just a pickup into the E, okay? I'm kind of setting up preemptively this E so that when it hits the downbeat, it feels good. And then all I'm doing after that is playing arpeggio, right? It's just root, fifth, third, root. That's all it is. So that's very simple. It's about as simple as you can possibly get. By the way, as I'm playing, if I play something or if I say something, third, fifth, root, or something, you don't understand what I'm talking about, because I'm sure people of all sorts of technical abilities or knowledge can watch this video. If that's something you want me to talk about, I absolutely will. Anyway, let's continue. So that, of course, is happening over the E chord. It makes perfect sense. It's just an E major triad going 1, 5, 3, 1. The next shape is this. That's the next beat, okay? So I'm playing F sharp, A, C sharp, E, right? Well, if you look at that just by itself, it looks like something maybe familiar. It kind of looks like an F minor 7 arpeggio, right? So root, third, fifth, seventh of the minor 7 chord, which makes perfect sense because the chord I'm playing at that moment is F sharp minor, right? Technically F sharp minor 11, but we won't get into that. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just outlining the chords straight up. And you're going to see as I continue, that's all I'm doing is outlining every chord perfectly, okay? So here's the E, F sharp minor. Here's the next little phrase, okay? That's the next beat. I'm literally playing E diminished right there. I'm playing the third, root, third, flat 5 of E diminished, and that is what the chord is at the time, okay? So I'm just arpeggiating very, very normal. The last little bit is this. Okay, so I'm playing B, G sharp, B, D right there. How does that function over the E chord that I'm playing? Well, it's the fifth, third, fifth, and then flat 7. So I'm kind of implying, by playing the flat 7, I'm implying that this chord is actually like an E7, like an E dominant seventh like that. I'm not actually playing a dominant seventh in the rhythm part, but I'm implying it by hitting that note. Okay, so that's really what's happening. Okay, and when I hit this note, that high E, that is the downbeat of the next section of the next chord, which is a dominant seventh right there. So let me get to that section in just a bit. First, let me play this nice and slow so you can see everything. By the way, I'm not really going to talk about like fingering or picking or anything like that. I'm going to leave that completely up to you to figure out what you like. I have my own way of doing things, which I'll talk about maybe in the future. But for now, if you want to learn this, I would rather you figure it out your own way. So if you want to play it like that, or like that, or like that, whatever. Figure out your own fingering to kind of get comfortable with it. So anyway, if I play it slow, it looks like this. I'll play it even slower. Okay, so one thing that's very important about this, and kind of why I chose this, I chose it because where I left off on each arpeggio or each chord, I just went to the nearest note of the next chord or the next arpeggio. So it kind of has this constantly nice, smooth, flowing nature to it. So right there, I'm going to move right up a whole step to the root of the next chord, move up a minor third to the third of the next chord, then up a half step to the fifth of the next chord, or excuse me. So as I'm moving, everything is just these small little steps. I mean, minor third's not that small, but it's not. I'm not making huge jumps. You could make huge jumps. You can go something like that. That's the same exact chord progression. That's E, F sharp minor 7, but I'm going like this, jumping way up. E diminished, and then sliding into the E dominant and finishing on this A. That's the same idea, just a totally different approach to it. Play it better. Right, so you could do that too, and that's totally viable. I just happen to do it another way. So that's kind of, if you like that sound, if you like that very arpeggiated chord tone approach, that's how I would do it. So that's this part, and let's get to the next section. Okay, and now for this next section that looks something like this, I'll play it a little slow. And that'll be the last section that we talk about for for this video. This section, first of all, we have to know what the chord progression is for this. So we have it's a lot kind of slower chords, I suppose, than the first part, and we just simply have A7 that lasts for a little while, E7, E dominant of some sort lasts for a little while, then we have a hit of B7, A7, E7, B7. It's about as simple as you can get. It's like a straight up blues style 1-4-5 sort of thing. So let's just talk about what I'm doing over each chord here. So all of this stuff, all of that is over the A7. And I'm going to talk about why I'm playing every single note and why I chose all this stuff. So this concept is really important, and it's actually a great concept if you like bluegrass, if you like jazz and all that stuff. Hopefully you already know what I'm about to say, but if you don't, it's going to be a really useful tool for you if you like this sort of sound. So this sound is kind of the chromatic-y sort of sound. It's not 100% chromatic, but there are definitely some chromatic passages in there. So let's talk about this first one. Okay, really common little shape. So I could just show you that lick and say, there you go. But I really want to talk about why I did this and why it's lining up like this. And what's really important is knowing which note I'm playing on the downbeat. Okay, so check this out. Every time I play the downbeat, like all of those hits, I'm going to tell you every note that I'm playing. So watch this. I'll start here. E, C sharp, G. Okay? So remember, the chord we're playing is A7 at this time. So the first note I'm playing is a chord tone. It's the fifth of the A7 chord. That note, the C sharp, is the third of the A7 chord. That C sharp is another third. It's C sharp again. Third of the A7 chord. And then that G is the 7 of the A7 chord, the flat 7 of the A7. So as you can see, every time I play a downbeat, I'm targeting a chord tone every time. Okay. What this does is, even though it's so fast, I mean, this tune's at like 160 beats per minute. It's so fast that you might not be able to really tell, but the line itself, the general line, the larger picture of the line sounds smoother and sounds more together with the chord because of this reason. Because I'm purposefully putting chord tones on the downbeat, okay? Which is why my first lick looks like this. You might be saying, well, why didn't I just go like this? Straight down chromatic. What's the deal with that little back half step and then up with it? Or up the back to the C sharp? Because if I did this, and I started here on the downbeat, notice I would end here not on a downbeat. I would be on 1 E and so the very last 16th note of beat 1. And then beat 2 would be my next note, okay? So what that kind of does is we're putting this C sharp kind of on right before the beat, so it's almost like we're hitting it prematurely, you know? Like that. It doesn't have that nice, smooth, hard chord tone sound when you, as opposed to putting on the beat. So all I did right there is I just said, okay, I need 4 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4 notes before I hit this C sharp. So all I did is I said, okay, I'm going to walk back, go behind the C sharp, and then up to it. This technique is a really common jazz, I guess, technique called, the fancy term, if you want to use that term to impress all your friends, is called chromatic enclosure, where if you have a target note right here, you play the note ahead of it, then you play the note behind it, and then you hit the note. And you do that knowing that your target note will be on the downbeat, and that's happening here. And it happens kind of throughout the solo a little bit. So that's what's going on right here. I could have done something else. I could have gone like, or that's a little wonky. Or I could have done like, and that's now getting outside of the chord, but you get the idea. You can kind of fill in the gap, fill in the space with whatever you want, as long as it makes sense and it sounds good, and as long as, of course, you land on a chord tone like that. So you're going to see that happening throughout this whole lick, so check it out. Here's the first one. Bam. Now when I'm here, I'm on the next beat. So now we have this. And there's the next beat right there. So if you might recognize this shape. It's that kind of very common arpeggio shape that a lot of people play. I'm just walking down the arpeggio shape. Now you might notice I'm not walking straight down. I'm not doing that. I'm hitting one extra note before I hit that C sharp for the exact same reason. Because if I just went straight down to the C sharp, that's on the of beat 2, let's say. 2 E and Once again, I'm hitting this note prematurely. So by adding just one note in before, I'm placing this note on the downbeat and it sounds like it flows, it sounds stronger. Now that note before could have been anything. I could have done this, which is kind of cool. I kind of like that just as much as I like this. So you can see I have a whole bunch of options. Or if I want like almost like a chordal sound where you stack fourths sort of thing, that's kind of cool. So you could do anything. Or I could do this. Right? Just coming down the dominant 7th. So it'd be like 3rd, root, 7th, 5th, 3rd, like that. But in this case, I didn't do that. I just did this. Like that. Okay. So you can see how you're going to see this all over the solo. It just happens all the time, no matter the section I'm in. It's just a very cool sound that I like for the bluegrassy sort of deal. So after we hit this, the next note I'm targeting is that. There's the G, that's the flat 7. I'm not going to explain. It's the same exact thing. That little chromaticism is there simply, so I'm placing this note on the downbeat. That chromaticism could have been somewhere else. Could have done it right there. Now notice, the lick is this. If I put the chromaticism up top, I can't keep the chromaticism here. Because now I just pushed that note ahead, a 16th note, and I pushed it off the beat. So if you add chromaticism somewhere, and you already had it somewhere else, you need to kind of take it away so that it stays even, and you still place that note on the downbeat, okay? So far, okay? From here, this is the next beat. That's the first downbeat of the next beat. That's the next section right there. So what am I doing there? That is up a G major 7 arpeggio. There's another little trick if you wanna practice playing over your dominant 7th chords. So if you're playing over A7, right, or any 7th chord, doesn't matter what it is, a very cool trick if you want to get some notes that are kind of the extended notes, not like the normal root 3rd 5th. Very easy thing to do is just simply go back a whole step and play major 7. Okay, so if this chord is happening, solo with this, something like that. And that's going to give you a lot of these cool extra notes. Like if I sing all the notes, we have bum, 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 or I'll do it up an octave. Bum, 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 bum. excuse me, I can't really sing that well, but I think you get the point. So all of these notes, you get like cool da, like that's that chord, like a 13th chord. You get a 9 in there, you know, bum, which is a great sound. It's like that. So if you want to access some of those notes without actually like looking for them inside of your scale, just go back a whole step, play major 7. You could do that anywhere. Let's say the chord I'm playing is E7, and I want to get that sound. Go back a whole step and play major 7, and you're going to be good. So that's kind of what's going on right here. Okay, so that's that first section. All right, that's that next little bit. Okay, moving on to the next section. We just finished this. Okay, the very next note after this passage, and this is, by the way, just straight 16th notes, so it is right after it, is this. We hit this G sharp, okay? And then we begin that lick. This G sharp by itself, in the context of that lick, doesn't really make any sense, because we're coming up a G major 7 arpeggio, right? And then we hit this. So just by itself, it doesn't really make any sense, but then if you look at the chord, it makes perfect sense, because the chord at this point, we are now not playing A7, we are now playing E7 at this point, and that note is just the third of E7, right? So we play that note, G sharp, E, D, F sharp, E is that phrase. Okay, and that E is the next downbeat. So, and that next part is E, B, A, G natural, G sharp. So that whole passage, like that. Okay, same deal. I'm just making sure that chord tones are being played on the downbeat. So downbeat, 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 just like that. And every time they're chord tones, thirds and roots in this case. That earlier we talked about this. That thing called chromatic enclosure. I'm doing the same thing down here. Check it out. There it is. Once again, I'm just playing a note so that I land on the G sharp on time and it's on a downbeat. That's the whole point. So after that, now we move on to the next little bit, which is a straight up E dominant 7th arpeggio. And then we eventually end on this D sharp right there. Now this is, like I said, a straight up arpeggio. But I do add in the C sharp right here because I want to make sure I get to this D sharp on time. So if I play just the straight up arpeggio and didn't play that C sharp, if I do it in time, so this is my tempo, it will be... So notice I get there a little early, which of course sometimes can be cool, but I didn't want that in this case. I wanted that note to be right on the downbeat. So I just simply added in that C sharp, which places that note now on the downbeat. Just like that, okay? So that's that passage, very pretty straightforward, just a straight arpeggio. Once we get to this point, this D sharp, now we're playing a B7 chord. Okay, so that's just the third of the chord. And this next section is pretty much just descending arpeggios. So if I play that, it looks like this. And that takes us to the next part. So once again, straight arpeggios. This is coming down the 3rd, root, 7th, 5th of the B7. And I'm doing it like that. The next little thing is still B7, but I'm just starting on the root. So root 7, 5, 3. Okay, B, A, F sharp, D sharp. The next thing is the exact same lick, just back 2 frets because the chord has changed. So it would be B7, A7, right? And that's just simply the chord's moving back 2 frets, so I move the lick back 2 frets. It's that simple. Okay? So the A7 is still continuing, and I just continue that little passage, that little arpeggio. Like that. So it starts on the A, then the next one starts on the G, the flat 7. So G, E, C sharp, and then it's an A sharp or a B flat, and then B natural. And that B natural happens when the E chord is hit, which is why I play that note. But this note right here, the A sharp, it might look like, oh, I'm playing briefly like a diminished shape right there, but I'm not really. I'm just playing, once again, one extra note so that the B is on the downbeat. So I could have done this. That would have been just fine. Something like that. But I just decided to do that. So just to recap that whole thing, descending arpeggios. Okay, now we're on to the next lick, and this is over E7 again. Pretty simple. It's kind of like an very E dominant sound. Just playing 5th, 3rd, 2nd, root, 7th, 5th of the E7. Okay? Then from there, I do a little chromatic walk up to this D sharp, because once again the chord has changed. Now I'm playing a B7, which is why that D sharp makes sense. That's the B7, and then I just simply walk down, little chromaticism to place the flat 7 of the chord on the downbeat. Bam, that's the downbeat. Then from there, excuse me, I just finished with that lick right there. Once again, a little bit of chromaticism to lead me into that E. And I also wanted this little, you know, cheeky, almost kind of corny blues lick, bluegrass lick, because I like that kind of stuff. And that's kind of the ending. So if I play from the E7, E7, B7, and then finally the E. And at this point, we are now on to the rest of the solo. So that's really it. As you can see, all the parts that I'm playing, heavy emphasis on the chord tones, where they're being placed on the downbeat and all that stuff. This whole passage, even though it sounds very complicated, you know, mainly because it's pretty quick, it's almost entirely arpeggios and almost entirely just focused on chord tones. So once you think about that and you understand how it works, it's actually really easy to put solos like this together. It's almost like a you know, you figure out a math equation almost. Of course, you still want it to be cool and have a nice flow to it. You don't want to just play random chord tones all over the place. But you can kind of use your ear to figure out how you'd want to do that. So if I play the whole thing, play that entire passage, everything I've gone through in this video, just so you can see it. I'll play it slow. Hopefully I don't screw up. So here we go. So that's it, really. There's nothing else to that solo. It's really focusing on the chord tones, making sure they land on the downbeat. And you're going to hear that a lot throughout the rest of the solo. When I do the other videos, you're really going to see that happening in different ways, because there are definitely some different chords in there with some different sort of concepts. So hopefully this helps, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you like this kind of long-form discussion of licks and each individual note and figuring out why I played it. I personally do like it. If I was watching a video like this, I feel like I would learn a lot, so I personally do like it. But please leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Take care.